Our next speaker is Nina Lewau from Migrationsverket in Sweden.
You have uploaded your presentation already? Or?
Yeah, it's here. I have all the presentations here.
Nina will be talking about terminology in enterprise architecture and business development. So, Nina, the floor is yours.
So, thank you for inviting me here. As said, I am Nina Lewau, and I'm an enterprise architect at the Swedish Migration Agency. And I'm going to talk to you about terminology within enterprise architecture. But before I do that, I would like to give you a little hint of what we do at the Swedish Migration Agency. If I find the... good. We serve individuals who seek protection in Sweden and those who want to work, study, live in Sweden or become Swedish citizens. And in addition to receiving and considering applications for from those people, we also provide housing spaces for the asylum seekers for the time they are waiting for the decision to be made. And also we, of course, collaborate a lot with other authorities and organizations in Sweden and in Europe that are part of the migration chain and getting people established in the Swedish society. And we are giving our tasks by the government, and we're commissioned by Parliament and government who sets the Swedish asylum and migration laws. And here are some numbers just to show you the number of resident permits that were granted in 2017. The majority being people coming to be reunited with their family. This being an effect of 2015, of course. And then we have the migrant laborers, where the majority of them actually are people coming to Sweden to work as blueberry pickers, if that's a term. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved jigsaw puzzles. Pieces that separately rarely mean anything, but by putting them together, they finally forms a wholeness and they make sense. It might be hard work, and for me it's easier to lay down the frames first and then put pieces together that forms a figure that's part of the puzzle. And sometimes the pieces just click into place effortlessly, but sometimes it actually requires some force to get them to fit together. This interest and passion for creating a wholeness has been with me through all my life, and it's actually what still drives me in my daily work. I'm not a terminologist, I'm an enterprise architect, although I would like to call me a very curious terminologist hangaround. And today I would like to give you an insight into my world of enterprise architecture and how I believe that terminology enriches it and contributes to the wholeness. And actually, when my kids ask me what I do at work, I usually answer that it's kind of laying a big jigsaw puzzle. Although I tell them that I really love my job, they have a hard time believing me that it could be fun just sitting in front of a laptop and attending meetings all day. But to give you a better understanding of my world, and I would first like to explain a bit about my background and the drivers for enterprise architecture. Previously, I have worked as a consultant for a large IT company for many years, mainly working as a project leader, requirements analyst, and business developer. I often found it very frustrating that the deliverables, even though they were delivered as ordered, they rarely fit in an organization that gave the desired effect overall. This kind of represents the feeling I had. And the wholeness wasn't quite there. And it's kind of another sort of silo problem, as you just saw another example of. And in this case being that each process, each department or a business area within an organization have their specific goals, responsibilities, tasks, and areas of expertise. And between those silos, there's often a lack of understanding that they all, in their own way, contributes to the same thing. And they don't always realize that their work and their different perspectives are actually perspectives of the same thing. This thing could, for example, be information sets or data sets. And so when the IT department introduces a new system or software, the information within that software they should perform a security analysis for that information. And the information being this data set. And when our legal advisors set up contracts for exchanging information with other authorities within this migration chain, the contracts affect the same information sets. And when our records managers talks about records and classification and archiving of information, they also talks about the same information sets. We all just use different terms and applies different perspectives. And when the pieces don't fit, there is no bigger picture. Or rather, within an organization, most of the people have their own version of the bigger pictures. And they might not always have the knowledge of how or why other functions in the organization affects the same things that they do. So when I discovered the area of enterprise architecture, I finally found the answers to the problems I saw. And the enterprise architecture gave me the possibility to work with my passion, contributing to the wholeness and gaining a common understanding. In this case, a common understanding of an organization. This would be an organization without silos, where everyone shares the same bigger picture and knows what part they have to play, how their work relates to others, and how all of their work holistically contributes to reaching the business goals. Unfortunately, as you might all know, it's not that easy to achieve. I am going to try to explain to you what enterprise architecture is about. And it is, as it is complex, this is a simplified description and not a complete description. An enterprise in this case is any kind of human endeavor with people collaborating together for a purpose, such as running a commercial business or a government body. And although we mostly use the term organization. But the enterprise is made up of many interrelated pieces, like structural pieces, such as buildings, equipments, the organizational structure, capabilities and skills, strategies and plans, compliance regulations, and information. We have operational pieces like processes and products, transactions and services, and supporting pieces like software applications, databases, hardware platforms, and networks, communication networks. All of these pieces are structured as components in a way that allows the enterprise to exist and fulfill its aims. This structure and arrangements in conscious design is the enterprise architecture, the architecture of the enterprise. So we as architects create frameworks for managing all these components and relating them to each other. And we keep detailed descriptions and visualizations of the architecture. And these abstracted visualizations of the enterprise enables a comprehensive and encompassing picture of the organization as a whole, the bigger picture. You might compare it to architecture for constructions and buildings, where there's a lot of different kinds of plans and drawings. For example, you have drawings for electricity, for plumbing, and for communication networks. And all of these different drawings combined makes up the building. So when one and the same wall is found in the drawings for the electricity, as well as for the plumbing and the communication network, and of course the floor plan, and the wall have the same measurements in all the drawings with consideration to each other. So when they are building the wall, the linings hopefully doesn't collide. So descriptions and visualizations of an enterprise works the same way, where the process map, the information models, the service list, the organizational chart, etc., all combined makes up and describes the enterprise, the organization, with consideration to each other. An architect looks at the architecture in two main states: how it is in its current state and how it might be in a future state, and then work out plans and options for moving from the current state to the desired future states, providing roadmaps and so on. Architects however, do not work alone. It's not the architect that decides what services or business goals there should be. But architecture, we work together with management, process leader, terminologists, etc., as architecture is a perspective of these pieces. The perspective of how to design and manage the pieces together. When I was employed as an enterprise architect at the Swedish Migration Agency, I was appointed the responsibility for the information area, where concepts and terms are a part of. And even though I had worked with concept analysis before, I decided to deepen my knowledge, and so I attended a 3-day course in terminology held by the excellent teacher Henrik and Stefano at TNC in Stockholm. And this was a real eye-opener into a new and a deeper world of concept analysis. And I realized why some of my previous concept analysis work hadn't always given the desired result. However, these new perspectives wasn't that easy to integrate into the architectural work and our body of knowledge. And methods and literature were scarce. So I decided to not waste either time or the taxpayers' money. So I started a network with other Swedish authorities. And by chance, actually, it was composed of mostly enterprise architects, information architects, linguists, and terminologists. And TNC was part of it, but now we have the Language Council of Sweden attending in this network. And no one of us has or had or has all the answers on how to accelerate our concepts analysis work and get the desired effect we want within our architecture. But we are building knowledge and gaining insights. We meet one day every 3rd month to discuss issues and share experiences. And these experiences being how we work with terms and concepts in relation to our architecture and share results from actual concept analysis works. And so what have we learned so far? Well, since we, and then I mean enterprise and information architects on one side and linguists and terminologists on the other, we have so different perspectives, and it's been kind of difficult to understand each other and understand each other's point of view. And I guess that traditionally we have most of the time worked in totally different arenas with different kinds of tasks and purposes. But we have come to realize that we do have the same goal, being that we all want to gain a common understanding. And however, what's needed to reach that goal is different. When I ask people within my organization what they need to do to define a certain concept, I get a lot of different answers. The user usually gives me a description of how they do their daily work. So if I ask them to define case, as in case handling, they might answer, that's what we do, the activities, in order to make a decision for an application. And if I ask an architect to define a concept, I get attributes to manage information about the reference of the concept. So if I ask them to define case, I might get an answer that a case is defined by that it has a start and an end date, a unique ID, a case manager is tied to an application, and so on. And from the statistician, I get conditions that needs to be fulfilled for the concept to be valid. So they might answer, a case is defined by that the post in the case table has this a value in the start date field. And from our legal advisors, I get arguments and reasonings for how to relate to the concept in a specific situation. So on the task of defining related person, they produce a 5-page document containing the reasonings for how to decide if a specific person is related to an applicant, being on how long they've known each other, have they lived together, what do they know about each other, and so on. Now, we, unfortunately, do not have a terminologist yet. I hope we will have soon. But if we would have one, I presume that the answer would be a terminological analysis. And of course, there are more roles and more answers to get. And of course, all of these answers are correct in their context and in response to the needs in the way that is relevant to their expertise. What I think we have missed at the Swedish Migration Agency is to tie all of these results together and perspectives. As I mentioned earlier, architecture is the structure of components and their relationships within an organization. And these components are, of course, concepts that needs to be analyzed and related to each other. So concepts are a core part of enterprise architecture and a core part of an organization. And what I'm trying to do now is tie all of these results from defining concepts in different ways into one common source where you can find not only the term and its definition, but also the information and concept models, attributes list, the legal reasonings, and so on. And I believe that one of the most important insights we've had in our network so far, that we need all of these perspectives combined when we look at a problematic situation regarding concepts and terms, as of course different kinds of problems need different kinds of solutions. And if the problem were to be assessed by only one of these roles, the number of alternative solutions to choose from would be few due to the assessor's limited area of expertise. As I said, a terminologist would probably suggest a terminological analysis. Architects would probably suggest a concept model, information model, and so on. And therefore, perhaps it's not the best suited solution that is being taken, but rather the solution known to the assessor and from the assessor's expertise. So I believe that by valuing every role's needs and the result for defining concept and involving all of these roles when assessing problems, we can find the best suited solution, which probably is a combination of many kinds of solutions, and combining and bringing them all together, we can achieve this one giant jigsaw puzzle and achieve the wholeness and gain a common understanding. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you very much for a different perspective on terminology work. I invite your questions or comments. Maybe you can tell us, when you talked about three structures of your architecture, of your enterprise architecture, I assume that members of each of those structures have their own, as you said, have their own definitions and view of concepts. Do you need one single concept and definition for your documentation? Would you have to find a mutual single definition of a concept, or could you have three definitions, three interpretations?
No, I think we need one definition, but I do think that different roles, like for an information architect, just the term and the definition isn't enough to managing the information. They need more, but still the more, the attribute list and so on, needs to be coherent with the definition. And in some cases we almost have the same definition, but we don't have combined these different perspectives together, and therefore we might be ineffective or misunderstanding.
My name is Ole Våge from the Norwegian Language Council. Thank you for your presentation. It's kind of new perspective on terminology work. From Norway, very often it's said that in terminology it's a combination of a terminologist and a field expert. I think that from recent experiences in Norway, a third person should be added to a kind of triangle. The enterprise architect, which is the kind of the driving force of terminology work in Norway right now. I have a question about the information models that you develop. You define concepts. Are those definitions made available outside these information models for the public or for term banks, etc.?
Well, we have just started. So right now we have a term bank that is only internally accessible. And the goal is, of course, to share this with others. But right now we have a focus on trying to understand each other within the organization. And as I said, we are trying to, in our architecture, we have the concept and the term. That is one of these pieces that has the term and the definition, the synonyms, and perhaps the description. And then you can click on it and you can see in what kinds of information models and information classes this concept is being managed. And from there you can also see in what situations are we exchanging this kind of information with other organizations. And we can see where's the master data for this, where do we store this information, and other kinds of, which processes are using this information, and so on. So it's all about knowing where this is being used.
Okay, time for one short question.
Well, thanks a lot, Nina. I saw a little bit of this network, and I find it's very interesting, something fresh, another perspective. For you, terminology was an eye-opener. I took information modeling. It was the other way around, an eye-opener for me. Do you think we should be including more of your background in the teaching of terminologists, in the training of terminologists? Would that be a good way forward to expand our horizon?
Yeah, I think it would be contributing to the understanding of where and why terminology is needed in order to get a more stable enterprise architecture, and how it contributes to, because as I said, my previous concept analysis work hadn't always worked, and that was mainly because traditionally we have, and by we I mean like information architects and IT people, mostly concentrated on the associative kind of relationships. And then we haven't really gone deep enough, because then there are these kind of weird things popping out that without outside of the context, and therefore it isn't as coherent. But when we look into terminological analysis methods, we get a deeper understanding and a more stable solution.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.